The colony ship Dawn's promise fell from the sky like a wounded bird. It crashed into the mud of a world that had no name, only a number in the old Earth catalogs. Inside the broken hull, 12,000 humans waited to die. Captain stood on the bridge and looked at the damage reports. The life support systems were failing. The water recyclers were poisoned by strange bacteria from this alien soil. The seeds they had brought from Earth would not grow here. The air was thin and cold, and winter was coming. She was 34 years old, and she was responsible for every soul on this ship. "How long do we have?" she asked her chief engineer. 3 months, he said. "Maybe 4 if we start rationing now. But the sickness is spreading faster than we can treat it. The bacteria in the water. We have nothing that can kill it." Closed her eyes. They had traveled for 60 years in cold sleep to reach this world. They had left behind everything they knew. And now they would die here, on a planet that did not want them. She did not know that someone was watching. The collective had ruled this region of space for 10,000 years. Their empire had once stretched across 1,000 star systems. Their cities had been made of living crystal that sang in the light of their suns. Their scientists had unlocked secrets that younger races could not even imagine. But that was long ago. Now they were dying. Their population fell with each generation. Their crystal bodies grew dim and brittle. They held only 47 worlds, and each year they held fewer. Their scientists said they had perhaps 3 more generations before the last would close their eyes and fall silent forever. High Luminary Oran was old even by standards. His crystalline form had once glowed with brilliant blue light. Now it was pale almost, and cracks ran through his body like rivers on a map. He stood in the observation chamber of his ship and watched the human colony on the world below. "They are dying," said his advisor, a younger named. "The planet is killing them slowly." "I can see that," Oran said. "They are not our concern. This world is within our territory, yes, but we have no obligation to help them. And we cannot afford to help them. Every resource we spend on these creatures is a resource we cannot spend on our own people." Oran did not answer. He watched the humans below. He could see them moving around their broken ship, trying desperately to survive. They were soft, fragile things. They lived such short lives. Could live for 1,000 years. These humans would be lucky to see 100. And yet they fought so hard to live. "What sickness do they have?" Oran asked. "Check the readings. A bacterial infection in their water supply. Their bodies cannot fight it. It will kill them all within 2 months. Can we cure it?" Stared at him. "High Luminary, the compounds needed for such a cure. They are the same compounds we use for our own survival treatments. We have so little left. If we give it to them, our own people will suffer." "I did not ask about the cost. I asked if we can cure them." "Yes, we can." Oran turned away from the window. "Then we will. Send our biosynthesis experts to the surface. Share our seed stocks that can grow in hostile soil. Give them everything they need to survive." His crystal form flickered with distress. "High Luminary, this is madness. These creatures mean nothing to us. They have nothing to offer us. They are primitive, violent, and short-lived. Why would we sacrifice our own future for theirs?" Oran was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "Because we were great once. We built wonders that made the stars jealous. We were wise and powerful and kind. And now we are dying, and there is nothing we can do to stop it. But we can choose how we die. We can choose to be remembered as we were, not as we have become." He looked back at the planet below. "Let us die having been kind one final time." 3 days later, the ships landed near the human colony. Captain walked out to meet them, surrounded by armed guards who were too sick and weak to fight. She expected enemies. She expected demands or threats or conquest. Instead, she found Oran waiting for her with gifts. They gave the humans everything. They gave them the cure for the bacterial sickness. They gave them seeds that would grow in the alien soil. They gave them water purification technology that would keep them safe. They gave them medicine and tools and knowledge. They asked for nothing in return. Stood before Orion in the shadow of his ship. The crystalline being towered over her, ancient and beautiful and sad. She did not have words for what she felt. Her people had been saved by strangers who had no reason to save them. Why, she asked, why help us? We have nothing to give you. Orion made a sound that might have been a laugh. That is exactly why we helped you. Because you could not help yourselves and we could. Because kindness should not require payment. Felt tears running down her face. She had been prepared to die. She had been prepared to watch her people die. And now they would live because of this strange, dying race that owed them nothing. She dropped to her knees in the mud. It was an old earth tradition, one that her grandmother had taught her. She pressed her hand to her heart. I swear an oath, she said, by blood and bone and the memory of those yet unborn. My people will not forget this. We will carry this debt until the stars grow cold. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, humanity will answer. Orion looked down at her. He did not understand the gesture. His people would not live long enough to see if her words meant anything. Stand up, Captain, he said gently. Go and save your people, that is payment enough. The ships departed the next morning. The humans watched them go, these strange crystalline beings who had saved them for no reason at all. In the first permanent building the colonists constructed, a young girl named Maria carved the symbol into the cornerstone. Her mother asked her why. So we never forget, Maria said. The colony grew. The humans survived. They named their new home New, and they built it on the foundation of a debt they would never forget. 847 years later, they would prove that meant every word. Archivist walked through the Hall of Honored Obligations. It was a vast building, stretching for kilometers beneath the surface of Earth. The walls were lined with shelves, and each shelf held records of debts that humanity owed. Some debts were simple: a merchant who had given food to starving colonists, a doctor who had saved lives during a plague. These debts were tracked, and when the time came, they were repaid. Other debts were ancient, promises made centuries ago, passed down through generations like sacred duties. His family had kept the same debt for 11 generations. They were the keepers of the obligation. She walked to the section where the records were stored. The shelves here were old, covered in dust that the cleaning robots somehow never touched. Nobody came to this section anymore. They were almost gone. Most people thought of them as a historical curiosity, a dying race that would soon exist only in textbooks. But remembered. She pulled out the oldest file. Inside was a recording made 847 years ago. She pressed the playback button, and Captain's voice filled the air. I swear an oath, by blood and bone and the memory of those yet unborn. My people will not forget this. We will carry this debt until the stars grow cold. Had heard this recording 1,000 times. She knew every word, every pause, every breath. It was her inheritance, passed down from her mother, and her mother's mother, and so on back through the centuries. Humanity had grown powerful since those early days. 300 star systems flew the human flag. Billions of people lived on worlds that could never have imagined. Humanity was not the greatest power in the galaxy, but they were respected. They were known for being stubborn, adaptable, and strange in ways other species could not understand. And they were known for keeping their promises. Had spent her life studying them. She knew their history, their culture, their slow decline. She knew that only 4 worlds remained inhabited. She knew that fewer than 90,000 still lived, scattered across those dying worlds. But something was wrong. She had been reviewing the data for months. The decline was too fast, too consistent. Natural extinction had ups and downs, periods of recovery and periods of collapse. But the numbers fell steadily, year after year, like a clock counting down to 0. It was too perfect, too controlled. Someone was killing them. Dug deeper, she accessed old survey records, shipping logs, environmental data from worlds. What she found made her blood run cold. The Dominion of had been slowly poisoning worlds for 300 years. They were a powerful civilization, aggressive and expansionist. They wanted this ancient territory, the rich star systems that the crystalline beings had once ruled, but they did not want to fight for it. War was expensive and unpredictable, so they had chosen a different path. They had contaminated the crystal resonance pools. These pools were sacred to the. They were where new were born, where the crystalline beings reproduced. They had introduced subtle poisons that destroyed the pools slowly, so slowly that they did not notice until it was too late. Each generation, fewer children were born. Each generation, they grew weaker. It was genocide stretched over centuries, patient, quiet, and almost complete. Took her findings to her supervisor. Her supervisor took them to the Director of Honored Obligations. The Director took them to the United Human Councils. The council chamber was enormous, filled with representatives from every human world. They fell silent as presented her evidence. Charts and graphs appeared on the screens around her. The slow poisoning of an entire species, laid out in cold, clear numbers. When she finished, no one spoke. Council elder stood. She was old, her hair white as snow, but her eyes were sharp as knives. She was distant relative, a descendant of the same family that had kept the debt for so long. "How certain are you?" the elder asked. "Completely certain," said. "The evidence is undeniable. They have been murdering the for 300 years." The elder nodded slowly. "And what do we owe them? Read the original oath." Pressed a button. His voice filled the council chamber, strong and clear despite the centuries. "I swear an oath, by blood and bone and the memory of those yet unborn. My people will not forget this. We will carry this debt until the stars grow cold. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, humanity will answer." The recording ended. Silence filled the chamber. Elder looked around at the assembled representatives. Her voice was calm, but something burned beneath the surface. "Then we pay in full," she said, "with interest." The decision was not debated. It was not voted on. It simply happened, as natural as breathing. Humanity would go to war for the. Across human space, the ancient communication drums began to sound. They were a tradition borrowed from old Earth, from a time before humans had reached the stars. They were used only for special occasions, only when humanity went to war not for survival or profit, but for honor. The drums had not sounded in 400 years. On Nu, the descendants of the original colonists gathered in the central square. They had kept their own records, their own traditions. Every child learned the names of the who had died crafting the cure that saved their ancestors. Every family had a small crystal, a gift from the, passed down through generations. When the drums sounded, they knew what it meant. "It is time," said Maria, the oldest living descendant of Captain. She was 107 years old, kept alive by medicines that would not exist without knowledge. "It is time to pay what we owe." The galaxy would soon learn something about humanity. They kept their promises. They remembered their debts. And when someone threatened those who had helped them, they would shake the universe to set things right. They did not know any of this. On their dying worlds, they tended their crystal gardens and waited for the end. They had accepted extinction long ago. They had made peace with their fate. They did not know that humanity was coming. The ambassador laughed. He sat in the great hall of the Neutral Assembly, surrounded by representatives from a dozen species. The human delegation stood before him, and they had just delivered an ultimatum that he found absolutely hilarious. "Let me understand this correctly," Ambassador Al said, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "You want us to reverse the contamination of the worlds. You want us to pay reparations. You want us to submit to judgment for our actions. and if we refuse, you will go to war." "That is correct," said human Ambassador Wei. Her face showed no emotion. Al laughed again. "For those dying crystals, there are barely enough of them left to fill one of your cities. They offer you nothing. They have no resources, no strategic value, no future. What you are proposing is completely irrational." Ambassador smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "You are right," she said. "It is irrational. We are going to do it anyway." The hall fell silent. The other species watched with confusion and fascination. They had three powerful allies. Their combined fleets outnumbered the human navy. By any rational calculation, humanity should back down. But the humans did not seem interested in rational calculations. "You are bluffing," Al said, but his voice was less certain now. "We are not," replied. "You have 30 standard days to accept our terms. After that, we will come for you." She turned and walked out of the hall. Her delegation followed. The doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. Al looked around at his allies. "They are bluffing," he said again. "They must be. No species wastes resources on symbolic gestures at this scale." But doubt had entered his voice, and everyone heard it. Across the galaxy, the human war machine began to move. This was not like other wars. Usually, war brought division. Politicians argued about costs and benefits. Citizens protested in the streets. Military leaders debated strategy and risk. None of that happened. For the first time in centuries, humanity was completely united. There were no protests against the war. There were no politicians calling for peace. Every human world, every colony, every station contributed what they could. The story of Nu spread across human space. Children learned how they had saved their ancestors. They learned the names of the crystalline beings who had given their own survival medicine to save human lives. They learned about High Luminary Iran, who had chosen kindness when he could have chosen indifference. Songs were written, poems were composed. Artists created images of the first meeting between and Iran. The story became something sacred, a reminder of who humanity wanted to be. And now, someone was murdering the people who had saved them. The human fleet assembled at the edge of territory. 700 warships, the largest human fleet ever gathered. Their hulls were painted with the same symbol that Maria had carved into the cornerstone of Nu 8 centuries ago. While the fleet prepared for war, Ambassador traveled to her ship landed on a dying planet. The great crystal cities that had once covered this world were mostly ruins now. Only a few thousand still lived here, tending the ancient gardens, waiting for the end. High Luminary Eth met her at the landing site. He was a direct descendant of Iran, and he looked very much like his ancestor, a tall crystalline being, beautiful and sad. But where Iran had glowed with faint light, Eth was almost completely dim. His people were dying, and he had accepted it long ago. "Ambassador," he said, "we are honored by your visit, but we do not understand it. Why have you come?" Bowed deeply. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a document. It was old paper, preserved for centuries in vacuum-sealed containers. The writing on it had faded, but it was still readable. At the top was oath, written in her own hand. "I swear an oath, by blood and bone and the memory of those yet unborn. My people will not forget this. We will carry this debt until the stars grow cold. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, humanity will answer." Below her signature were other signatures. Dozens of them, hundreds of them, stretching down the page and onto new pages that had been added over the centuries. Every human leader since had signed this document. Every one of them had reaffirmed the debt. Eth's crystalline form trembled as he looked at the document. His glow, so dim before, flickered with sudden light. "You remembered." His voice was barely a whisper. "Humanity always remembers," said. "We have never forgotten what your ancestor did for us. We have never stopped being grateful. And now we have learned what they have done to you." She looked into Ev's ancient eyes. "High Luminary, we are going to war for you, but we need to know something first. What would justice look like? What do you want us to do?" Ev could not answer. For centuries, his people had prepared for extinction. They had made peace with their fate. They had stopped hopping for anything except a quiet end. And now the humans were here, with a debt they had kept for 847 years. "I must consult with the other elders," Ev finally said. We did not expect this. We did not expect anything." Nodded, "Take all the time you need. We will wait." That night the elders gathered for the first time in 300 years. They discussed what the humans had told them, what the humans had offered. Some could not believe it. Others wept, their crystalline bodies making sounds like wind chimes in a storm. "Why?" one elder asked. "Why would they do this? We are nothing to them. We are dying. We have nothing to offer." Ev thought of his ancestor, Oran. He thought of the decision that had been made 8 centuries ago to help the humans when helping would cost them dearly. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "kindness does not require payment. Perhaps that is what Oran understood, and perhaps the humans understood it too." He looked at the document had given him. All those signatures stretching across centuries, all those promises kept and reaffirmed generation after generation. "They remembered," he said. "They remembered, and now they are coming to help us just as we helped them. Perhaps we should let them." The elders voted. For the first time in centuries, they voted for something other than acceptance. They voted for hope. In the morning, Ev met with Ambassador. "We want justice," he said. "We want them to stop what they are doing. We want our people to have a chance to survive, but we do not want genocide. We do not want to become what they are." Nodded, "Then that is what we will fight for. Justice, not revenge. Survival, not destruction." She reached out and took Ev's crystalline hand. It was warm, like sunlight on glass. "We will not fail you," she said. "Humanity never forgets, and humanity never lets a debt go unpaid." The war began on a Tuesday. Human ships crossed into territory at 17 different points. They did not sneak or hide. They came openly, their hulls painted with the symbol, their communications broadcasting the same message on all frequencies. "We are humanity. We have come to collect a debt." They and their allies fought back hard. They had expected this war, even if they had not believed it would really happen. Their combined fleets outnumbered the humans. Their weapons were powerful. Their soldiers were fierce. But they had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that humans fought like other species. Other species fought for territory. They fought for resources. They fought for power. These things could be negotiated. These things could be traded. A species fighting for territory might accept a compromise if the cost became too high. Humanity was not fighting for territory. Admiral James stood on the bridge of the flagship Remember New. He was 63 years old, a career military officer who had spent his life preparing for conflicts that never came. His great-grandmother had been born on New. She had grown up with the stories. She had taught them to her children, and they had taught them to their children. Now, finally, James understood what those stories meant. "Admiral, the fleet is ahead, 200 ships. They are blocking our path to the—" James nodded. "Signal the fleet, all ships advance. We will go through them." His tactical officer looked nervous. "Sir, they outnumber us. If we attack directly, we will take heavy casualties." "I know," James said. "We attack anyway. Every hour we delay is an hour the suffer. Move forward." The battle was terrible. Ships burned in the void. Thousands died on both sides. They fought with skill and courage, but they were fighting to defend territory. The humans were fighting for something else. When a human ship was crippled, its crew did not surrender. They aimed their broken vessel at the enemy and rammed. When a human captain saw a chance to protect a world, they took it, even if it meant their own death. They could not understand it. Commander watched from his command ship as the battle raged. He was Al's nephew, a veteran of many conflicts. He had never seen anything like this. "They are insane," he said. "They throw away their lives for nothing. They cannot help them. They have no resources, no power. Why do they fight so hard?" His advisor, a young named Al, spoke carefully. "Perhaps they are not fighting for what they can give them. Perhaps they are fighting for what they already gave." "What do you mean?" "I have studied human history. 800 years ago, they saved a human colony. They gave medicine, food, technology. They asked for nothing in return." Waved a limb dismissively. "That was centuries ago. No one remembers things that happened centuries ago." "Humans do," Al said quietly. "They never forget." The battle ended with the fleet in retreat. The humans had lost nearly a third of their ships, but they had won. They pushed forward system by system, world by world, driving them back toward their core territories. The galaxy watched in disbelief. At the hive mind's court, the vast collective consciousness processed data from thousands of sources. They calculated outcomes, analyzed patterns, tried to make sense of what they were seeing. "It does not compute," the hive mind announced. "The humans gain nothing from this war. Victory will cost them more than they could ever recover from their casualties are already enormous. Their economy is suffering. By every measure of rational behavior, they should stop." A human diplomat named Sarah was present at the court. She was the sister of Ambassador Wei, and she had been sent to explain humanity's actions to the confused. "You are still not understanding," she said. "This is not about what we gain. It is about what we owe." The hive mind processed this. "Explain." 847 years ago, they saved 12,000 humans. They gave us medicine that their own people needed to survive. They chose our lives over their own future. They asked for nothing. She stood up. "We owe them everything. We owe them our existence. And now someone is murdering them. What kind of people would we be if we did nothing?" The hive mind had no answer. The war continued. Months passed. The human advance slowed, but it never stopped. More ships arrived from human space. More soldiers enlisted. More resources poured into the war effort. And then came the Battle of Prime. They had massed their remaining fleet at the... If they could destroy this world, kill the last significant population of, then the war would lose its purpose. The humans would have nothing left to fight for. 300 ships moved toward the planet. On the surface, they watched the sky and prepared to die. High luminary Eth stood in the ancient crystal garden, surrounded by his people. There were only 3,000 of them left on this world. Children held their parents' hands. Elders who had lived for centuries closed their eyes. "We had hope," Eth said quietly. "For a little while we had hope." And then the sky lit up. Human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly between the fleet and the planet. 112 ships, all that could arrive in time. They were outnumbered nearly 3-1. Admiral's voice came over all frequencies. "Attention fleet. This is Admiral James of the Remember New. 847 years ago, they saved 12,000 humans who meant nothing to them. Today, we return the favor." He paused. "Every life is worth a human ship. Test us." They tested them. The battle was the bloodiest of the war. Human ships burned and broke and died. The Remember New took hit after hit, its hull torn open in a dozen places. Admiral refused to retreat. "Hold the line," he ordered. "Hold the line no matter what." Below on the surface, they watched the battle in the sky. They saw human ships sacrifice themselves to block weapons. They saw human pilots ram their fighters into cruisers. They saw humans die, again and again, to protect a species they had never met. Eth wept. His crystalline body sang with sorrow and wonder. Why, he asked no one, why would they do this? The battle turned. Reinforcements arrived from other human fleets. The faced with destruction finally retreated. Their fleet fled into deep space, broken and defeated. Admiral, wounded and exhausted, spoke one final message. Prime is secure. Begin landing medical and restoration teams. We have a debt to pay. On the surface, human ships descended. They carried doctors and scientists, medicine and equipment, everything needed to begin revering centuries of contamination. They carried hope. A child, one of only a few hundred left on the planet, watched the ships land. She saw humans emerge, strange soft creatures with 2 arms and 2 legs and faces that leaked water from their eyes. She did not understand why they were crying. She did not understand any of this. But she understood that she was alive when she should have been dead. And she understood that these strangers had come from across the galaxy to save her. She walked forward and took a human's hand. "Thank you," she said, in the human language she had only just learned. The human knelt down and hugged her gently. "We should have come sooner," the human said. "We should have watched over you better, but we are here now, and we will never leave you alone again." The war ended not with a great battle, but with a surrender. The dominion of had been broken, their fleets were destroyed, their allies had abandoned them. They were surrounded by human ships, they had no choice left. The galaxy expected humanity to destroy them. After everything they had done, after the centuries of slow genocide, no one would blame the humans for demanding blood. Many species would have done exactly that. But humanity had learned something from the long ago. They had learned that mercy was not weakness. High Luminary Eth stood in the great hall of the Neutral Assembly, the same hall where, months before, the ambassador had laughed at humanity's ultimatum. Now that ambassador knelt before him, waiting for judgment. The hall was packed with observers from every major species. They had come to witness the end of They had come to see humanity take its revenge. Eth looked at the kneeling leader. He thought about what this creature's people had done. 300 years of slow poison, generations of children never born, a civilization brought to the edge of extinction. He thought about rage. He thought about justice. He thought about what it would feel like to order the destruction of just as they had ordered the destruction of his people. Then he thought about Iran, his ancestor who had chosen kindness when he could have chosen indifference, who had saved the humans not because they were useful, but because they were suffering. Eth made his decision. "Stand up," he said. Ambassador Al stood slowly, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Your people tried to murder mine," Eth said. "For 300 years you poisoned us. You stole our future. You nearly succeeded in erasing us from existence." He paused. "But we will not do to you what you did to us." The hall was silent with shock. "The dominion of will not be destroyed. Instead, you will spend the next 1,000 years repairing what you broke. You will fund the restoration of our worlds. You will send your scientists to help rebuild our crystal pools. You will teach your children what you did and why it was wrong." He stepped closer to Al. "You will learn what we learned. You will learn that some debts cannot be escaped. And perhaps, in 1,000 years, you will understand why mercy is stronger than revenge." Al looked up, his eyes were confused. "You are letting us live." "Yes, but you will live as debtors. You will live as servants of the species you tried to destroy. And every generation for the next 1,000 years, will know the shame of what their ancestors did." He turned to face the assembled observers. "This is justice. Not destruction but restoration. Not revenge but redemption. We were shown mercy when we did not deserve it, and so we will show mercy in return." After the ceremony, Ambassador Wei found Eth in a quiet corridor. "You could have killed them all," she said. "Your people wanted it. Many of my people wanted it too. Why mercy?" Eth's crystalline form glowed softly. He looked healthier now than he had when they first met. The human doctors had already begun revering the damage to his people. For the first time in centuries, children were being born again. Because your ancestors showed us mercy when we were dying, he said. Oran could have ignored the human colony. He could have saved our resources for our own people. Instead, he chose to help strangers who could give him nothing in return. He looked at, "We did not just pass our debt to you. We passed our example, and now we pass it to the... Perhaps they will learn. Perhaps in 1,000 years someone will try to destroy them, and they will be saved by a species that remembers their kindness." Nodded slowly. That is a very long view. My people have always thought in long views. That is why we kept our honor even as we died. And that is why your people kept their promise even after 8 centuries. He reached out and took her hand. "Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you for remembering." The news spread across the galaxy. The war was over, they had survived, and humanity had done something that no one expected. They had won, and then they had shown mercy. In the halls of the hive mind, the collective consciousness processed this information with something very close to confusion. They could have destroyed they chose not to. This does not match our models of predator behavior. This does not match any of our models. A new file was created in the database. It was labeled Humanity, Anomalous Behavior Patterns. It would grow very large over the coming centuries. Across the galaxy, other species began looking at their own histories, old debts they had forgotten, old kindnesses they had never repaid. Some were ashamed, some were inspired. The Trade Federation discovered that they owed a significant debt to a small species called the... They had forgotten about it for 300 years. Within a month of the war's end, they had begun repaying it. The collective of found records of a debt to themselves from before the decline. They sent ships laden with gifts to Prime. Something was changing in the galaxy. Something that had started with a dying race's kindness to a struggling colony 847 years ago. A new monument was being built. The planet had grown from 12,000 desperate colonists to 60 million thriving citizens. The cornerstone that Maria had carved with the symbol was now part of a museum. Millions came every year to see it, to remember how their world had been saved. The new monument stood beside the old cornerstone. It was 2 statues, carved from crystal donated by themselves. The first statue was High Luminary Oran, tall and beautiful, his crystalline form catching the light of the sun. His hand was extended in greeting. The second statue was Captain, kneeling in the mud, looking up at the being who had saved her people. Her hand was pressed to her heart. Between them, carved into the base, were the words of her oath. "By blood and bone and the memory of those yet unborn, my people will not forget this. We will carry this debt until the stars grow cold. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, humanity will answer." On the day of the monument's dedication, a young child and a young human child stood together in the crowd. They had become friends over the past months as their peoples worked together to rebuild. The child looked up at the statues. Her crystalline body was bright and healthy, full of the life that the human doctors had helped restore. "Will you remember us forever?" she asked. The human child took her hand. She was the latest in a long line of descendants, children who had grown up with stories of the debt and the promise. "That is the thing about us," she said. "We never forget, and we never let a debt go unpaid." Above them, the stars shone in the afternoon sky. The galaxy was vast and cold and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities. They would not die. They would grow again, slowly, over centuries, and they would always have humanity beside them, stubborn and strange and eternally grateful. Somewhere out there, other species were learning the lesson that they had learned, the lesson that the galaxy was beginning to understand. If you are cruel to humanity, they will fight you. If you are indifferent to humanity, they will ignore you. But if you are kind to humanity when they are weak, they will remember. they will remember forever. And when they are strong, they will shake the universe to repay that kindness. This was humanity. This was their gift and their curse. They never forgot. They never let a debt fade. And their response could shake the universe.